Days Gone is one of the most immersive zombie video games, that is The Last of Us, and Sony is developing a movie adaptation starring Sam Heughan. So many horror video games have been adapted into movies in the past, whether it's Silent Hill or Resident Evil, and Days Gone could be more thrilling than any of them. But the survival game isn't the first release that gamers thought would be on the list of games in dire need of an adaptation, and they have some ideas of their own about which ones have the most potential. As the race to make the first great video game movie continues, Redditors believe these games are the likeliest candidates. Metal Gear Solid POSSIVILITYSIMILAR28 wants to see Metal Gear Solid reach the big screen, noting, "I love the story and feel as though it could be adapted as either a movie or a series. I'm getting tired of everything becoming a series now, so I would rather a 3-part movie." The 3-part movie is pretty optimistic, given that a sequel would totally depend on how successful the first movie is. But considering that the Metal Gear Solid games are unapologetic in their unapologetic storytelling, a trilogy is exactly what it needs. Either way, a stealthy espionage movie with Snake as the lead character could be such an epic and entertaining action thriller. A Metal Gear Solid movie is currently in development, so the Redditor's dream may actually come true, but it has been in development for a while. Metroid games are constantly developing when it comes to storytelling, and that's why so many fans want to see them come to life on the big screen. However, Reddy Aubin chooses a game that dates all the way back to 1986 and is more of a fun shooting game with no care in the world about narrative, at least not until the later games. The Redditor thinks Metroid has tons of potential, positing, "I would go with a Blade Runner meets Aliens approach for a Metroid movie. Basically, a mystery mixed with solid action topped off by a weird ambience. That's a great pitch, and it'd make up for the underwhelming Alien games that were released in the past decade." Mirror's Edge ILUVEMEMES4 Breakfast wants to see a movie adaptation of Mirror's Edge, a free-running game about a woman who evades government surveillance in a futuristic city. The Redditor pitches, "I think Mirror's Edge could be cool if they find a way to translate the world into a nice-looking set. Always thought it's an extremely visually pleasing game. A Mirror's Edge movie might be a little too late, as the original 2008 game capitalized on the popularity of Parker at the time, which has mostly died off, except for the meme from The Office. However, it's still one of the most unique-looking games of the 21st century, and it'd make for an interesting aesthetic for a movie." Silent Hill 2 Silent Hill is an iconic survival horror series, and it was already adapted into a movie in 2006. Unfortunately, the film wasn't all that faithful to the franchise, and it was universally scathed. But THROWTHECLOWNAWAY20 thinks the second game, the best game in the series, still has the potential to be a great movie. The Redditor explains, "I want a disturbing, suspenseful, low-action, survival horror that ends with a dude talking to his bedbound dead wife on a roof. I want a SH2 that is 2 hours of dread and pain that the audience is still thinking about a week later." A Silent Hill 2 adaptation would leave audiences in bits, as the horror is all psychological, and the story is emotionally exhausting, and it's in no way the simple torture movie that is the 2006 version. Myst is a classic puzzle video game that takes place on a whole island, and players run into extraordinary things that lead to a larger mystery. Infinitudity thinks the game should be adapted into a movie, believing that it could make for a slow-burn mind-bending fantasy that bridges into the book series. The movie adaptation would struggle to separate itself from Lost, which has such a similar concept, but all it has to do is stick the landing. It could make for a great edge-of-the-seat mystery and as the Redditor notes, it leads to a whole series of books that built on the mystery, which is screaming out for a huge movie franchise a la Harry Potter. Ridge Racer is one of the most unique racing games on the original PlayStation, as its futuristic-looking racetracks and amazingly designed vehicles are visual spectacles. Bertsident Park wants to see the non-story-driven racer turned into a movie, but it comes with an asterisk. The Redditor wants Ridge Racer with the original techno soundtrack. Ridge Racer might not be the biggest box office success, as the niche subgenre of futuristic neon-lit racing movies has never done that well. Both Speed Racer and Tron Legacy had underwhelming box office performances via Box Office Mojo, but there's no denying how incredible they look and how hypnotic they sound. Those types of films are absolute audio-visual experiences, and Ridge Racer would be no different. God of War Calma McCarthy wants to see a movie adaptation of God of War, which fans have been craving for years now. The Redditor pitches God of War, hardly any dialogue, ultra-violent, kinda like the episode of Primal when he fights the monkeys. The movie could be a raw and animalistic revenge tale, and Robert Eggers should direct the film. Like Metal Gear Solid, a God of War project is currently in development at Amazon Prime Video, but not as a movie. The epic and violent video game based on Greek mythology will be a series on the streaming service. But that's no reason to worry. If The Boys is any indication, Amazon won't hold back on the game's gore and violence, and it could end up being Amazon's own Game of Thrones. Turok Flat Foz 7318 wants to see a movie adaptation of Turok, The Ultimate Humans vs. Dinosaurs video game. The Redditor confesses, "I'm genuinely surprised we haven't gotten a Turok movie." A Turok film adaptation would be like a schlocky 80s movie a la Big Trouble in Little China. For some reason, there hasn't been a renaissance of John Carpenter-esque action horror flicks, but there totally should have been. Turok is the movie that could lead that renaissance, and it'd be like if James Cameron directed Jurassic Park. The filmmaker raced Spielberg for the rights, and he noted that his Jurassic Park would have been like Aliens with dinosaurs. If that's the kind of movie that Cameron wants to make, he could easily get the rights to Turok and make exactly that. Super Smash Bros. This user thinks a Super Smash Bros. Game could be fantastic, and they even have an idea of their own for the film's aesthetic. The Redditor posits, "I would love a Super Smash Bros. Movie filmed in the same vein as Death Race or The Condemned." A Super Smash Bros. Movie would be a licensing nightmare, as it's a crossover fighting game that features Pokémon, Final Fantasy, Sonic the Hedgehog, and dozens of other franchises. As different movie studios own the licensing rights to all the different video game properties, it's almost an impossibility that the movie could ever happen. However, there's no doubt that it put Mortal Kombat and any other tournament fighting movie to shame, if it did exist. Resident Evil. While so many video game movies have bombed at the box office, the Resident Evil movie series has failed upwards. Despite being critically scathed and hated by fans of the games, the Resident Evil films have been hugely successful, as the series is made up of 6 blockbuster movies, and they have grossed a total of over $1.2 billion via Box Office Mojo. However, a deleted user wants to see a more faithful adaptation of the source material, rhetorically asking, "I know it's already been made, but can I get an actual good Resident Evil movie?" There's so much potential for a great re-movie, especially if Resident Evil 4 is adapted. Given that the Netflix original series has failed and won't be renewed for a second season, it might be time to think about Res